Hey guys, can you turn that down? 18 seconds in, we got our first person. Ooh, second person at 22 seconds. I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer until we hit about 1 minute in. I'm actually also about 3 minutes early. Erica, hi. Missing my jelly beans, Erica. That's what I'm doing. Missing my jelly beans. I need it. So if you are joining us for the review, we recommend having some blank paper and your spiral. Hello, Asha. And something to write with. And if you have it, I would actually recommend having your blue book, because your blue book can be a really great way to kind of flip through. And if there's things in your blue book that you can't answer, then you can. No, test is not tomorrow. The test is on Wednesday. To make sure you have time to go back and review it. Okay, we do have about 2 more minutes, so I'm going to take just a second. Hold on. Why don't you go do that? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so the test is not tomorrow. I'm just doing this a day early so people can have time to watch the video more than once if that's what they would like to do. Yes, you may watch TV in mommy's room. Abby knows how to do it. And so we're going to go over quite a bit of information today. So it's really good to kind of spread that out. Really good to kind of spread that out. I will warn you that I am cat sitting for someone. And so there is a cat in my house. And yesterday it was trying to eat my computer while I was working. So there may be a cat trying to interrupt us at various points. It is 6:29. We have about 1 more minute before we officially begin, giving people a chance to hop on. Once again, if you're joining us for the review, make sure you have some paper. You probably want something to write with, your spiral. And if you have your blue end of year star review booklet with you, we also recommend having that, as it's a really great place to kind of flip through and look for what are some things that even after this I can't answer. Because when you don't know the answer to a question, that's a great place to start looking at questions you can ask. Okay. All right, it is 6:30, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody who has joined us so far. All right, so what I wanted to start with was just a general timeline of everything we've discussed so far. So this is everything from the entire semester. Your DPM, your district progress monitoring for the fall, does incorporate everything from the very beginning of school all the way through the current topic. All that's what's available. Okay, it's only 25 questions, but they pull from multiple different things. Okay. All right, so the review. We start with early colonization. You know, the Spanish and the French are coming over, they're forming colonies, glory, God, and gold. And then in 1607, the British formed their first permanent colony, Jamestown. They're trying to make money off gold, but what they end up making money off of is tobacco, because the geography of Jamestown is really perfect for growing tobacco. In 1620, the Pilgrims come seeking religious freedom, and they are going to settle in Plymouth, Massachusetts. and they will write the Mayflower Compact. And 1620 is really the hot date for the Mayflower Compact. Both those dates have stars because they are hot dates. Okay, and we're going along, and we're going to start founding more colonies. Slowly, all 13 colonies will be founded, and that's going to make us happy. And we're going to have the growth of democracy. There's several documents that are written during this time, several ideas that happened, including the Great Awakening, Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, that are going to help lead to a growth in democracy. And this is all because salutary neglect is happening, because they're ignoring us. It makes us happy, and we are growing in democracy. Okay. And then we have the French and Indian War happens. And at the end of the French and Indian War comes the proclamation line, which we'll cover in just a minute. But basically, the king says, you guys can't go past the Appalachian Mountains because I'm tired of fighting with the Native Americans. We do not like this. It makes us upset. That's why we fought the whole war. Then you have, over this time, you're going to start to see an increase in taxes, increase in mercantilism, no taxation without representation, the Boston Tea Party, and the Intolerable Act. So we're seeing that thermometer notes happens in this time period here. And it's going to lead us to the Declaration of Independence, where we declare independence from Britain in 1776. Then we have a war. So we have a war for independence. This is the American Revolution. Major battles, Lexington, Saratoga, and Yorktown. Miniature battles, Trenton, and not a battle, but a time period of Valley Forge. And we win the war, and we write the Treaty of Paris of 1783. And then we have our government for a little while, the Articles of Confederation, which we had the hand weaknesses. We also talked about how that's a fail. Then in 1787, that's our next hot date, we write the United States Constitution. The principles of that Constitution are flip rocks. Then we have another bit of time here where we are trying to get it ratified. So there's people who want it ratified and people who don't want it ratified. And then finally, we will add, once it's adopted, we will add a Bill of Rights. Now, this part right here is probably going to play heavily on the DPM just because it has in previous years. It's our most recent unit. I will also say this is the unit of the government test right here. So that is where we really struggled on that government test. So we're going to kind of go through some of these things fairly quickly, and then we're going to spend a good amount of time right here in this last portion. If you're finished with this video and you still feel confused about that government, please remember there are 2 government review videos that you can look over as well. So let's start at the beginning, early colonization, and the founding of Jamestown and the founding of the Mayflower Compact. So remember that people are coming over here. You have Europe, European powers, and that's France, Spain, and England. And the basic is the 3 G's, glory, God, and gold. And with France, we talk about France, friends, fur, and England. You have Jamestown. There's a little bit of a difference. Jamestown, they're looking for gold. And the Pilgrims are looking for religious freedom. Okay, so that's sort of the basic of the 3 European powers, why they're coming over. Obviously, Jamestown and the Pilgrims are both hot dates, 1607 and 1620. The Pilgrims are a hot date because in 1620, they write the Mayflower Compact. MCSCSG. The Mayflower Compact is a social contract for self-government. So that's just a little reminder of that. The Mayflower Compact is a social contract for self-government. All right. So that's just a heads up that this is just a reminder of some of these things. This is pretty basic. I don't spend too much time on that. Jamestown wants gold, but they end up with tobacco because they have rich, fertile soil because they're in the South. So that geography is going to impact their economy because they end up with tobacco. Okay. So that's just this first little bit. Then we move into the period of time where all of the colonies are being settled. Okay, so we move into the period of time where all the colonies are being settled. All right, and we talked a lot about there's a whole booklet of all the different colonies, but we sort of focused on 3 major ones, and we had our umbrella with that. Okay, and that was our 3 pilgrim groups. Okay, and we had the Puritans, the Catholics, and the Quakers. Okay, and the Puritans ended up in Massachusetts. The Catholics ended up in Maryland, and the Quakers ended up in Pennsylvania. Okay, so that's one of those really easy visual kind of things you can put on your test. Salvador. One of those quick, easy visual things you can put on your test to help you remember those 3 pilgrim groups and where they ended up. Okay. The only other colony we talked about quite a bit was Georgia. And that's because it was a debtor colony and a buffer colony. Okay. So Georgia is a debtor colony and a buffer colony, and then these 3 colonies are based on pilgrim groups. So the Puritans end up in Massachusetts, the Quakers end up in Pennsylvania, and the Catholics end up in Maryland. And this is how our 13 colonies begin to grow. Okay, so once again, we kind of start here. On our timeline, we got some glory gotten in gold going on. We're founding Jamestown. We're going to figure out we can grow tobacco, rewrite the Mayflower Compact as the first social contract for self-government. And then time goes on and things start getting bigger and we start founding more colonies. More religious groups are coming. We formed Georgia as a buffer colony. And while all that is happening, we're experiencing these seeds of democracy, okay? These seeds of democracy. And some of those, and we do the tree. So the tree has been something that we have come back to over and over again. And some of the roots of the tree are the Mayflower Compact. And again, that strategy is MCSCSG. We also talked about the English Bill of Rights. I'm Bill and I have rights. Remember the English Bill of Rights, not the American Bill of Rights. That comes much later. Okay. Talking about the Magna Carta. It's one of the first documents to limit the power of the king. And we have our little picture of our king and his little ball and chain that limits him. Okay, and we talked about the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. Which makes us start thinking about a constitution and what is a constitution? FOC equals FOC? Yes, Miss Potato. And then the last one, which was kind of the weird one, is the Great Awakening, which our strategy for that is choice and voice. religious choice equals political voice. Yeah, it's a political awakening. It makes people start getting involved in politics and believe that they have a right to have a voice and everything in politics. Okay, so these are the seeds that are getting planted. These are the seeds of our tree. Okay, and because of the water of salutary neglect helping our seeds to grow, remember, salutary neglect sounds like a bad thing, but makes us happy because they're ignoring us and letting us do what we want. Okay, because of salutary neglect, this is going to grow into our DOI, our Constitution, and our representative democracy. And our representative democracy. So once again, all our little roots, all these seeds, okay, from the Mayflower Compact all the way over to the Great Awakening, choice and voice, are going to grow through the water of salutary neglect into our Constitution and representative democracy. Okay. So this is something we covered over and over and over again because we kept coming back to it and we kept coming back to it and we kept coming back to it, and it's appeared on multiple tests. LMJM technically covers everything from the entire semester, as much as they can in 25 questions. All right, so that's all happening. Democracy is growing, salutary neglect is happening, we're settling all the colonies, we're very happy, and then we have the French and Indian War. Okay, and the French and Indian War is all about the Northwest Territory of the United States. Okay, which is just past the Appalachian Mountains. And we want to go and settle and live in this territory, okay? And so we have a fight over this territory. We have a fight over this territory, and it is the French and Indians versus England and the colonists. So French and Indians, which is why it's called the French and Indian War, they were on the same side. England and the colonists. And we win, and it's a long fight, but Britain loses a lot of money. And they don't want to have this fight anymore. They didn't like it. And so they're going to pass something called the Proclamation Line of 1763. Okay, and the Proclamation Line of 1763. And that basically says, yeah. So, and that's the first step is actually the Proclamation Line. And it says, okay, you can't go past these mountains. You have to stop here. So you're coming across the Atlantic Ocean and you have to stop here. You can't go into the Northwest Territory that you just fought for and died for and everything like that. So obviously the Proclamation Line is going to make us pretty upset. Okay, we do not like the Proclamation Line. It's going to make us pretty upset. So we get upset about this Proclamation Line. We don't want to cross it. And then in order to make up the money, so that's how they deal with the fighting. So they don't want to fight the Native Americans anymore. So they fix the fighting problem with the Proclamation Line. Okay. They fix the other problem, the fact that they don't have any money, by beginning to tax us a lot. And this is the beginning of taxation that's going to lead us to the American Revolution. And remember, we had a thermometer for our notes. And it begins with the proclamation line. And then we get some of our basic taxes. Yes, and we have to stop salutary neglect, which then really mercantilism kicks into gear. Okay, so when salutary neglect is on the way out, mercantilism is going to kick into full gear. Okay, so with the proclamation line, we're going to get an increase in mercantilism, which makes us mad. We don't like mercantilism. They're using us to get rich. We have the Sugar Act. There's a bunch of other acts, Townshend Acts, so on and so forth. Big one is the Tea Act, because that's going to lead to the Boston Tea Party. And the Boston Tea Party is going to lead to the Intolerable Acts. Okay. Yeah. So we don't really have a way to make more money because we can't go into the Northwest Territory to farm some more. And then they're going to start taking our money through all of these taxes. Okay. So just to go over that really quickly, and again, this is a much simplified version of what we were looking at. It really is focusing on the highlights, the most important pieces. So we have the proclamation line of 1763, which says we can't go into the Northwest Territory, and we don't like that. And we have an increase in mercantilism, which is making us angry. Okay, and then we have the Sugar Act, and we're going to respond to the Sugar Act with boycotts, and this is where we get our phrase "no taxation without representation." And then that's going to lead us to, then they're going to have the Tea Act. And the Tea Act is going to cause the Boston Tea Party. And the Boston Tea Party causes the Intolerable Acts. Because the Intolerable Acts are literally a punishment for Boston, Massachusetts, because of the Tea Party. So because of the Tea Party, which ruins all this tea and loses them tons of money, then they're going to punish us with these Intolerable Acts. Okay, so the Intolerable Acts are a punishment. This in turn, we're starting to heat things up a little bit here. This in turn is going to lead to the first and then the Second Continental Congress. And the Battle of Lexington and Concord actually comes first. First battle of the American Revolution. And after that battle, we will officially declare our independence with the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so we will officially, and that's in 1776, hot date, 1776. Okay, so once again, going back. Okay. Columbus discovers the Columbus discovers the Americas, the continent of the Americas. People start settling. Okay, the three European powers: France, Spain, and England. France trends fur, glory, God, and gold. Jamestown is established in 1607. They're looking for gold. They end up growing tobacco because of the geography of the South is rich soil. And then in 1620, the Pilgrims land in Massachusetts because they're looking for religious freedom. And they write the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact is a social contract for self-government. After this, what starts to happen is a whole bunch of other colonies start to get founded. We have our three pilgrim groups. The Puritans go to Massachusetts. The Quakers go to Pennsylvania, and the Catholics go to Maryland. Georgia is the other one we talked a bit about. they're a debtor colony and a buffer colony. So this is about money and this is about religious freedom. So this is about money and this is about religious freedom. And you really want to know these three pilgrim groups. So we're all happy starting our 13 colonies. And as we're starting our 13 colonies, all of these different things are happening that are going to be seeds for democracy. So the Mayflower Compact, the English Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, first official constitution, and the Great Awakening, choice and voice. Religious choice leads to a political voice. All these things become seeds, watered by salutary neglect. They leave us on our own, and so we have democracy growing. It grows into the DOI, our Constitution, and finally our representative democracy. We're very happy. Democracy is growing, colonies are growing, and then we end up in the French and Indian War. We want the Northwest Territory. We fight over it. We win. But then they make the proclamation line, which makes us angry because it says we can't go to this land we just won. There's a stop sign. And so that's going to be the beginning of some leading towards the American Revolution. We have the proclamation line. There's an increase in mercantilism, which makes us mad. They have the Sugar Act, which we respond to with boycotts and no taxation without representation. They passed the Tea Act, and so we have the Boston Tea Party and the Intolerable Acts. Okay, and then the Intolerable Acts punish Boston, Massachusetts, and that'll lead us to the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, which officially declares our independence and begins yes, and begins the American Revolution. Okay, the buffer colony is actually, so South Carolina and North Carolina are these colonies sitting there, and then these Native Americans keep raiding North and South Carolina. Okay, and North and South Carolina are a bunch of really rich English people. So they're all mad that they keep getting raided by these Native Americans. So they put Georgia in the middle to protect them from the Native Americans. So now the Native Americans are invading Georgia instead of the Carolinas. And remember, Georgia is a debtor colony, so all the people living in Georgia are people who owed a debt. So they're all poor people. So that's the buffer colony. So it's like a protection. So like here's the Carolinas, here's North and South Carolina, and then they put Georgia right here to protect it, so nothing can get there. Okay. So that's what a buffer colony is, like a bouncer at like a club. You know, they're going to bounce you out and not let you come in. That's what Georgia does for us. Bounces out the Spanish and the Native Americans in Florida and says you can't come in. All right, so let's talk about the Declaration of Independence first. Okay, let's talk about the Declaration of Independence. So the DOI is our breakup letter. I always say there's 4 major images you want to think of with the DOI. The first one is our breakup letter, the broken heart. Okay, because we're going to break up with Britain. Okay, the alien, whose name is LLP. Which are our unalienable rights. Remember, unalienable means you cannot take them away. They don't have to be earned. They are just the rights you are born with. Okay. And the angry G for the grievances. Okay, like taxation without representation. We were mad about that. We're mad about soldiers in our houses. We call quartering. We're mad about unfair trials. And then the last one is the big signature of John Hancock. So these are our sort of our 4 images of the Declaration of Independence, okay, which is in 1776. So in 1776, we break up with Britain, LLP, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, are to our unalienable rights, rights that cannot be taken away, grievances, and then our John Hancock. So, all right. Now let's talk about the war. There's 2 kind of parts to the war: is the people and the battles. Okay, the people and the battles. And if you go back to your review sheet from the American Revolution unit, which page number I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but that review sheet is actually divided into, you got the battles on one side and the people on the other. So we're going to look at the battles and then the people first. Okay, so battles first and then people. So with the battles, we have our LSY as the 3 major battles. Okay, so the L is Lexington and Concord, and the L is supposed to kind of look like a 1, so that we remember that that's the first battle. It's also, as you guys already mentioned earlier, the shot heard around the world. Okay, and then the S is Saratoga. It's our turning point. After Saratoga, we get the alliance with France. And we put the little arrows on the end of the S to kind of show that it's a turning point. And then Yorktown with the period at the end because it's the last battle. And Washington surrounds Cornwallis. In Yorktown, Virginia. Okay, so those are our major 3. We're going to talk about 2 other things in just a minute, but those are our major 3, okay? So Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world, first battle. Saratoga, the turning point that gives us an alliance with France. Okay, that was actually one of our most missed questions on the American Revolution test, is why Saratoga was a turning point. It's because we get help from the French, that we get an alliance with France, okay? Convinces France to become our allies. And then Yorktown, which is our last battle, yes, where we defeat Candy Cornwallis. Okay, Mr. Candy Cornwallis, he retreats. He's being attacked, and he retreats back to Yorktown, Virginia, where he is surrounded by General Washington and the French troops. Okay, now the 2 extra ones we want to add in are Trenton. Trenton is that surprise battle where Washington crossed the Delaware River on the boat and snuck up on the Hessian soldiers and surprise attacked them. And then the other one is Valley Forge. Okay, which is the super cold, awful winter at Valley Forge, where it's a negative that turns into a positive because they become a trained fighting force. Okay, it's a negative that's turned into a positive because they become a trained fighting force. So those are our other 2 little ones that we pay attention to. Okay, Trenton and Valley Forge. Okay, so people of the American Revolution. No, Valley Forge isn't actually a battle because nobody's fighting. They're just freezing to death and starving. But it is an important kind of event in the American Revolution. It's an important event in the American Revolution. It's one of those events that it doesn't actually really matter where it comes on the timeline. It's really just important because that's how we become a fighting force. Like before that, we really don't know what we're doing, and we're just sort of kind of shooting at them and running away and shooting at them and running away, which is great. And you can win a lot of battles that way, but you can't win a war. So we use this time at Valley Forge, this cold winter where we have no supplies. We use that time at Valley Forge to train and practice and become a trained fighting force so that when we attack General Cornwallis at Yorktown and surround him, we can defeat him. Okay, with the German guy, yeah, von Steuben, who yelled at us in German until we figured out how to fight. Okay. All right. So then I'm going to talk about some of the people, okay? And now we're not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to highlight 4, okay? One of them is Washington himself, okay? Who is the general of the colonial army. Which you can also call the colonists or the USA. Okay. T-Paine, Thomas Paine, who writes Common Sense. Warren, Mercy Otis Warren, who is also a writer, who convinces people to join the revolution. And then Armistead, who's a spy and slave. Okay. So here's our people. Again, George Washington. He's going to win. He's a winner. Washington wins. Okay. He's the general of the Continental Army. Remember, they might say the colonists, they might say the U.S., they might say the colonial army, they might say the Continental Army. There's a lot of ways they can word that. T-Paine, Thomas Paine. He's a writer. He writes Common Sense. T-Paine and Mercy Otis Warren are very similar in that they're both trying to convince people to support the American Revolution. Galaxy plays, that's the DOI. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is Thomas Jefferson writing the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Paine, it's common sense to love T-Paine. That's right. It's common sense. You got to love T-Paine. It's just common sense. Thomas Paine, we don't really have a quote from Common Sense that we use, but he also writes a pamphlet called The American Crisis. It says, these are the times that try men's souls. But I would just worry about it. He just writes things that convince people to join the revolution. Warren writes things that convince people to join the revolution. They tend to like focusing on one of these 2 writers and how they influence the American Revolution. And then you have James Armistead, who's the spy and the slave. Okay. James Armistead, who's the spy and the slave. So that's our American Revolution. We win the American Revolution, sign the Treaty of Paris of 1783, kick the British off our land, and then we have to form our own government. Okay, and we kind of don't do so great the first time we do that. Okay, so we're going to try to form our own government, and we're going to come up with a government that doesn't really work so good. And we're going to call that the Articles of Confederation, also called the AOC, the Articles of Confederation. Okay, yes, and the AOC is a fail. So again, we always tell you there's 2 ways to approach this. One is with the FAIL acronym. So F is first attempt in government. So it's our first, as the United States, the official United States of America, this is our first government, the Articles of Confederation. It's all the power to the states. Income is impossible to get and little power to the center. Okay, so it is a fail. It is a fail. The other way that we learn this is by having the hand. Give me a second, I'm tracing my hand. And one thing you could do is as soon as you get your test, you could flip it over on the back, trace your hand, and fill out those weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation so that you don't forget them. The pinky is weak. Okay. The ring finger means they have no money because they can't tax. And by weak, they have a weak federal government. Okay. They're having border disputes. States are blaming each other. And there's no respect from other nations. So they're getting no respect. Okay, so those are the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. And then Shays' Rebellion. Is going to knock it down. It's going to end it, okay? So Shays' Rebellion is going to end the Articles of Confederation. It's going to show us just how weak this is. Shays shows. Shays shows the weakness. Okay. All right. Go back. We're going to review just a couple things we just went over. Okay. Yeah, the veterans were unhappy about getting paid, and they were getting put in jail. They were unhappy about that too. So we're all happy. We got salutary neglect. We have the seeds of democracy, fundamental orders of Connecticut, Great Awakening, choice and voice, and then we get into the French and Indian War, proclamation line. We're going to hate that. Then we have the increase in mercantilism, the Sugar Act, which was followed by boycotts, the Tea Act, which leads to the Boston Tea Party, which leads to the Intolerable Act, which punishes Boston, Massachusetts. And then that's going to lead us into the battles of Lexington and Concord and the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence is written in 1776 by Thomas Jefferson. It is our breakup letter from Britain. It outlines our unalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness based on the ideas of John Locke. So you cannot take these away. You cannot take these rights away. We have many grievances that we list: taxation, soldiers in our homes, unfair trials, and it's signed by John Hancock. That leads us into the official American Revolution. Major battles include the Battle of Lexington and Concord, shot heard around the world. The Battle of Trenton, which is the surprise attack. The Battle of Saratoga, which is our turning point because it leads to an alliance with France. Not a battle, but winter at Valley Forge, where we turn a negative into a positive, and we spend the winter training and become a trained fighting force, which helps us to win at Yorktown when George Washington faces off against General Candy Cornwallis. At the Battle of Yorktown, he surrounds him in Yorktown, Virginia, and wins. During this time, obviously, Washington, very important dude. T-Pain, you gotta love T-Pain. It's just common sense. Warren equals a writer who convinces people to join the revolution, and Armistead is a slave and spy. After we win the war, we need a government. So we're going to come up with the Articles of Confederation. This is going to be a total fail. Okay, we put too much power in the states and not enough power in the central government. It has all these weaknesses. They don't have any money because they can't tax. They have a weak central government. And so Shays' Rebellion is going to come along. Wrong, right? Shays' Rebellion is going to come along and knock down the Articles of Confederation. And obviously, once the Articles of Confederation, we see how weak those are, we're going to need to replace it with something else. And that's when we get into the Constitutional Convention of 1787. All right. And the big argument here is about representation. Because representation equals power. The more representatives you have, the more votes you have, the more power you have. So we end up having two plans. I'm going to set this up like it was in our unit test. Okay. You have the Virginia plan, which is for large states and calls for proportional representation. And you have the New Jersey plan, which is small states and has equal representation. And this is sometimes Ms. Evan calls this the why not both compromise, as this is going to give us the great compromise gets us Congress. GC equals GC. Great compromise, get Congress. And you have the U.S. House of Representatives based on the Virginia plan. And you have the U.S. Senate based on the New Jersey plan. Okay, so you end up with a two-house legislature. Okay, so it's two little houses side by side, a two-house legislature, and that's our Congress. Okay, that's our Congress. You really want to be able to think of that picture of the two little houses. Okay, you really want to be able to think of this picture of the two little houses. All right. Okay, and then the other compromise that's also about representation is the 3/5, which is about slaves and how will they be counted for representation and taxes. Okay, don't get these two compromises confused. Just because you see the word compromise doesn't mean it's the right answer. You need to think about the Great Compromise gets us Congress. You want to think about this image with the Great Compromise. 3/5 is always about slaves. Okay, Virginia plan and New Jersey plan. There's no like plan names in this one. In Virginia plan and New Jersey plan. Okay, and eventually we finish writing the Constitution. Take a quick check here. Eventually we finish writing the Constitution. And then there becomes an argument about whether or not, that's that cat. Becomes an argument about whether or not to accept this Constitution. Okay, whether or not to accept the Constitution. And that's the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. Okay, Federalists, you have James Madison, okay, who is the father of the Constitution. They love the Constitution. They want you to accept it. Okay. They like strong central government. Yes, Zoe, I'm assuming. Okay, Alexander Hamilton and John Jay are also in it, and they write the Federalist Papers. Or why you should love the Constitution too. Okay. On the anti-federalist side, you have George Mason is our big one. And he is the father of the Bill of Rights. He convinces us to have a Bill of Rights. They do not like the Constitution. And they do not like a strong central government. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson is another one of those. Patrick Henry is another one of those. Okay, but your basics are the Federalists, James Madison, father of the Constitution. They love the Constitution. They like a strong central government. They write the Federalist Papers, which could be subtitled, Why You Should Love the Constitution Too. And then you have the Anti-Federalists. Okay. George Mason, who's the father of the Bill of Rights. They do not like the Constitution, and they do not like a strong central government. They are big about avoiding tyranny. We are now really heading into the government portion of this. So we're going to review this, everything we've done so far one more time. And then we're going to spend the rest of our time on governments. Okay, here we go. So again, 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue, and everybody's all like, hey, let's go check out this new place. So France, friends fur, they're trading fur with the Native Americans. Spain is glory, God, and gold. They're sort of killing off the Native Americans. And then you got England, who's sort of got a mean girl thing going on. Okay. England founds Jamestown because they're looking for gold, but they end up with tobacco. Tobacco is a cash crop. The beginnings of the cash crops in the South are what is going to lead to slavery. Okay. Cash crops always equal slavery. Cash crops are always going to equal slavery. Okay. So they wanted gold, they end up with tobacco, and because of all those cash crops, they're going to end up having slaves in the South. That's why there's slavery in the South, okay? And then you have in 1620, the Mayflower Compact, social contract for self-government. And then we're pretty happy, and we start growing a lot more, getting all 13 colonies. Georgia is a buffer colony and a debtor colony, and then you have these 3 pilgrim groups under our umbrella, okay? You have the Puritans from Massachusetts, you have the Quakers from Pennsylvania, and you have the Catholics from Maryland. Catholics from Maryland, okay? Think Hail Mary. And they're happily growing. And as they're growing, we are getting seeds of democracy being planted. The Mayflower Compact is a social contract for self-government. The English Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut is the first official constitution. And the Great Awakening, which is choice and voice. Religious choice leads to political voice. And that activity is going to help lead us to the growth of watered by the water of salutary neglect, which we like. The DOI, the Constitution, and our representative democracy is all in line with what's growing out of these seeds. So the seeds of democracy are growing. In the meantime, we have the French and Indian War. Okay. We want to go into the Northwest Territory. We fight over it, we win, but then they say, no, proclamation line of 1763, you cannot go over there. We get very mad about that. And that's going to be sort of towards the beginning of leading us to the American Revolution. So we have the proclamation line, stops us from going west. It stops us from going west, okay? Remember, this is east, this is west, okay? Mercantilism increased, which makes us mad. We have the Sugar Act, which we respond to with boycotts and no taxation without representation. The Tea Act leads to the Boston Tea Party, which leads to the Intolerable Act, which punishes Boston, Massachusetts, leads to the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The DOI is written by Thomas Jefferson in 1776. It is our breakup letter with England. It also has the unalienable rights, little alien with LLP. You cannot take these away, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It also lists our grievances. This question's been on the last 3 tests. Grievances. That's really one to pay attention to. So it lists our grievances, taxation without representation, soldiers in our homes, and unfair trials. And then our John Hancock signature. This leads us into the actual American Revolution. Battle of Lexington, shot heard around the world. Trenton is a surprise battle. Saratoga is the turning point because we get our French alliance. Valley Forge is the winter we spend training to become professional soldiers. And Yorktown is the last battle where Washington surrounds General Cornwallis in Yorktown, Virginia. Once we win, we need a government, so we create the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation is a fail. And we also do the hand of weaknesses that is knocked down by Shays' Rebellion. Once the Articles of Confederation is clearly failed, we're going to need a new constitution. So we have the 1787 writing of the United States Constitution. Okay, the first one is all about representation as power. So we're fighting about how we choose our representatives. Virginia Plan versus New Jersey Plan. The Great Compromise will get us our 2-house Congress. The 3/5 compromise is about how we count slaves for representation and taxes. We're going to argue about whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing. The Federalists, led by James Madison, love the Constitution. They like a strong central government. And they write the Federalist Papers about why you should love the Constitution too. Then you have the Anti-Federalists, led by George Mason. They do not like the Constitution. They do not like a strong central government. George Mason is the father of the Bill of Rights. Mason is the father of the Bill of Rights. Okay, cash crops leads to slavery. All right, government. So after we get through all that history stuff, we get to talk about government. And the government we talk about that's established in 1787 is still our government today. So that doesn't really have a timeline because it continues from 1787 to the present day. All right. So we're going to talk about flip rocks, which are the principles of government. Now, one of the things we did in my class is after that last government test, we sat down and we looked at the 7 principles of government, the 3 levels of government, and the 3 branches of government. Those are all different things. Okay, the principles, the branches, and the levels. Okay, so we start with federalism. Federalism is our triangle, has an F, an S, and an L. Okay, deals with federal, state, and local. Those are actually our 3 levels of government. Okay, federal, state, and local. Federalism is the only principle of government that deals with anything having to do with the states. Okay, and it is most closely associated with the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. L is limited government, and it has the same picture for it as the Magna Carta. So you have a king, and they have a little ball and chain, and they're chained down by the law. Okay, they're chained down by the law. Okay, individual rights. You have the little alien, LLP. And he is holding a piece of paper now that says 1 through 10, talking about the Bill of Rights. So your unalienable rights, your rights that cannot be taken away, along with your Bill of Rights, creates your individual rights. Okay? The entire purpose of the Bill of Rights is to protect your rights. So then you have popular sovereignty. Anytime you see popular sovereignty, you got to draw your voting ballot box. Okay. Popular sovereignty is about voting, how we practice our power as people. And then you have republicanism, where we elect our representatives. And we elect them to send them to Congress, our two-house Congress. Okay, so representative republicanism. Then you have checks and balances. And we have two little images we make for that. One is the scale, where power is being balanced. One thing I brought up today with my classes is the word power is not a keyword. So I try to tell students to focus on keywords, especially if they're looking at primary source quotes. Power is not a keyword because power could be referring to federalism. If they're talking about power shared or separated between the federal and state government, they are talking about federalism. If they talk about power divided between the three branches, they're talking about separation of powers. And if they're talking about power that affects each other and balances each other, then they're talking about checks and balances. So power can come up in several ways. So don't focus on the word powers and think, oh, it's separation of powers. Okay? Look for the other clue words. For federalism, your clue word is states. States' rights, state powers, state control, federal and state, national and state, the U.S. government and state. For separation of powers, your keywords are legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. Legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. Okay. So and then separation of powers, we do this divided powers LEJ. Notice both of these have to do with LEJ. Both of these deal with these three branches of government. Both of these deal with the three branches of government, okay? So federalism deals with the three levels of government, federal, state, and local. They're levels, like levels of a pyramid. Oh, I'm on level 1. Now I want to go up to level 2 and then up to level 3, okay? Whereas these are branches. They go off from each other, but they meet back at the same tree, okay? And they can interact with each other, okay? So the three branches of government are ledge or gel. They really gel together, JEL or LEJ. Legislative is one of them, and they write laws. Okay, so they introduce laws, they write laws. Then the executive is another one, and they're going to enforce laws. And the judicial is the third one, and they're going to interpret. The law. And they're asking the question, is this constitutional? And the judicial branch can throw out a law if they think it's bad. They think it's unconstitutional. So those are your three branches of government. Legislative writes the laws, executive enforces them, and the judicial interprets. So those are your keywords for your three branches. If they're talking about the three branches, they're talking about one of these two things. They could ask you about these exact things, okay? Legislative rights to laws. Honestly, if you can brain dump, I know this is a lot of information on one sheet of paper, but if you can try to get this in your head and brain dump this on the back of your test, it's going to help you with a bunch of questions, okay? Because you got all these principles of government, you've got the three branches, you've got the three levels, a lot of information here. So it's definitely something to look over and over and over and over. Okay. I think citizenship is the next thing I need to talk about. Making sure, kind of checking my list here. Sorry, Bill of Rights first, then citizenship. Bill of Rights, I almost forgot the Bill of Rights. Okay, Bill of Rights. Amendment 1, 5 in 1. Religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. The most basic of all of our freedoms. Freedom of religion comes from the fact that religion is protected in our Constitution. Freedom of speech is the reason we have such free and open speech is because it's protected in our Constitution, okay? So our most 5 basic rights, religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech, 5 in 1. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Third Amendment, no quartering of soldiers. See, there's a quarter right here, no quartering of soldiers. Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable searches and seizures. You can't come into the 4 walls of my house without a warrant. Fifth Amendment, right to remain silent. Sixth Amendment, right to a speedy trial. Seventh Amendment, right to a jury in a civil case. Salvador, right to a jury in a civil case. Eighth Amendment, the crime must fit the punishment, no cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, the crime must fit the punishment, no cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, number 9. 9 is fine because it's mine. I have other rights not listed. And 10 is great. It's for the states. That's federalism. So I'm going to take a second real quick and I'm going to make us a little anchor chart. But the gestures are really the big thing that we've been focused on. We repeated those every single day for an entire week. Okay. So again, 1 is religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. And remember that the Bill of Rights is part of the Constitution, okay? It's just added to the Constitution. So anything protected in the Bill of Rights is protected in the Constitution. And remember the quartering of soldiers goes back to one of those grievances. And I'm being real quiet for a second while I write this. So actually the Bill of Rights was actually written in 1789, and it was formally adopted in 1791. It took 2 years for everybody to vote on it. Because remember, we can't write the Bill of Rights until after we have a constitution, because it's added to the Constitution. It's an amendment to the Constitution. It's amending the Constitution. So we had to write the Constitution and then get the Constitution ratified, get everybody to vote for it, have this fight between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and then we got to add the Bill of Rights. Well, so then we had to write it. Then it had to go through the ratification process itself, where 2/3 people approved it, and then 3/4 of the states approved it, and it was formally added in 1791. So the first 4 years of our United States Constitution, we didn't have a Bill of Rights. It took 4 years to get all of that done, to get the Constitution accepted, to get the Bill of Rights written, and to get the Bill of Rights accepted. It takes 4 years to get all of that done. I don't have pictures for these because we have hand gestures. I will point out that 5, 6, and 7 are all related to due process of law. Okay, 5, 6, and 7 are all related to due process of law. It's Nyla. Are you from a different school? That's very funny. Okay, so the Bill of Rights is added to the Constitution. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. Okay. Right to bear arms. No quartering of soldiers. No unreasonable search and seizure. Our due process amendments. Everybody has the right to a process of legal steps that happen when if you're accused of a crime and you're going to go to trial. There's certain steps that everybody has to get. Everybody gets these protections. It's a process, the appropriate, the correct, the due process of laws. Amendments 5, 6, and 7. 8 says no cruel or unusual punishment. 9, I have other rights not listed, and 10 is federalism. Okay. Citizenship, last thing. Woo, we are an hour and 13 minutes into this. I know some of you have been hanging tight the whole time. So citizenship, last piece. And really, I'm not going to write anything for this one because it's really mostly stuff you'll already get. Okay, citizenship is okay. Now that's what I thought, but you said you had your test tomorrow, and I was confused because your test got. Does your test have the principles of government on it? I remember that Nyla L. Your last name starts with an L. I don't want to put your business out there, but I didn't realize you had a test that had principles of government on it, or the Bill of Rights. So I'm hoping that it's helpful to you. Okay, so citizenship. You have rights, you have responsibilities. Your rights are, we just went over them. Okay, plus life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, based on the ideas of John Locke. Unalienable rights cannot be taken away, written into the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. As a citizen, you also have responsibilities. You have the responsibility to participate in government by voting. You have the responsibility to participate in government by participating in the judicial system, by being a member of a jury. Okay, so you need to be a member of a jury, participate in the judicial system. Don't litter, things like that. Okay, so you have different stuff you have to do that as a citizen, and that's really it for citizenship. I'm not drawing or writing anything because that's not a lot to it. Jury, judicial. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to kind of go over my list, and I'm just going to check mark some things. We talked about the Federalist Papers. We talked about the Anti-Federalists, George Mason and the Bill of Rights. The Federalist Papers were written to get people to support the Constitution. They were written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. We talked about John Locke, the unalienable rights. He helps come up with that idea of unalienable rights. Thomas Jefferson writes them into the Declaration of Independence. The little alien dude, LLP, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. We talked about our hot dates. We showed that timeline way back at the beginning of. Are you going to go, Judy? Thanks, Ben. Our timeline way back at the beginning. From 1607, our hot dates have stars on them. Okay, we go from being happy colonists to being angry, having a war, and then trying to create our own government. Settling. There are 3 pilgrim groups. The Puritans ended up in Massachusetts, the Quakers ended up in Pennsylvania, the Catholics ended up in Maryland. Georgia was founded as a colony for debtors and a buffer colony. Okay. In the South, they had cash crops. Cash crops lead to slavery. In the North, they did not have cash crops. They focused on trade. Knocked over my soda. That's how important this is. Industrialization did not exist during this time period. No one has manufacturing. No one has industrialization. It's a unicorn. If an answer has the word manufacturing in it, it's wrong. Manufacturing in the colonies does not exist. Okay, thanks. Hey, I just want to point out to all my current students that Nyla, who is now a 9th grader at Cy Woods High School, is using these reviews to help with her 9th grade class because the stuff she learned in 6th and 8th grade is on her test. So this stuff is useful next year. Thank you. Thank you, Nyla. Okay. But not really because I have stuff to check on. Okay. So we talked about that settling. We talked about mercantilism. We talked about salutary neglect. We talked about our tree of liberty and the seeds of the fundamental orders of Connecticut and the Great Awakening, choice and voice, that grow into the United States Constitution and our representative democracy. We talked about how we got mad because of the proclamation line of 1763, and they told us you can't go west. No going to that Northwest Territory, no going west. You got to stop here. And so they wouldn't let us pass. And we got mad and they started taxing us and we started boycotting. And eventually they put the Tea Act and we got tired of boycotting. So we threw all their tea into the harbor and they punished Boston, Massachusetts for the Tea Party with the Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts are a punishment. And so we're all like, forget that. We're going to have the battles of Lexington and Concord and the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence has those unalienable rights, LLP, that can't be taken away. And it also is our breakup letter from England. After that, we have the American Revolution, Battle of Lexington and Concord, Saratoga, the turning point that alliance with France, Yorktown, where Candy Cornwallis retreats in fear to Yorktown, Virginia, where he becomes surrounded by General Washington and the French. Okay, and then you have and Valley Forge is also in there. Remember, we turn that into a positive, even though we're freezing cold and we don't have any food. We're going to train really hard and become an expert fighting source. And then we win and we write the Articles of Confederation, which totally failed. You ever feel bad about how badly you're doing? Remember, the smartest people in our country's history wrote the Articles of Confederation, and it was a fail. It was a total fail. So remember, we have the hand, the weaknesses, it's weak central government. They got no money, border disputes, blame, no respect. We also have fail, first attempt in government, all the power to the states, no income and little power to the center. So that doesn't work. Shays' Rebellion knocks it down. We have to get together, write a brand new constitution. First step in that constitution is the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise, Virginia Plan and New Jersey Plan. Why do you call General Cornwallis Candy Cornwallis? Well, a couple of reasons. One, because it was Halloween and I wanted candy corn. And his name is General Cornwallis. And so I was thinking about candy corn. So that's one. Two, candy is like kind of a meaning of like you're kind of pathetic and weak, like, oh, you're so candy. Okay, you don't say that, but like when I was a kid, people would call each other Candy. Okay. Um, but when I was a kid, people would call each other Candy, like you're so candy. You're gonna run away in fear. So he lost, so he was kind of candy, and he was candy because he was running away in fear because he was retreating to Yorktown, Georgia. What God, I call it Georgia, Yorktown, Virginia. Um, so that's why I call him Candy Cornwallis. Okay. Um, and then uh, where was I? So Yorktown, Virginia, we win. Oh, we create great compromise creates our two-house legislature, our two houses of Congress, one on the Virginia plan and one on the New Jersey plan. Three-fifths compromise is about slaves. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are going to fight over whether or not this is going to be passed, and the Federalists write the Federalist Papers because they're not very good at naming things. And that's to convince you why you should love the Constitution too. And they win, and the United States Constitution is passed, and that creates our 7 principles of government: federalism, the triangle; limited government, the king with the shackles; individual rights, LLP, and the Bill of Rights; popular sovereignty, voting; republicanism, representatives, republicanism; checks and balances, which is the scales and the 3 branches of government; and separation of powers, which is the 3 branches of government. The 3 branches of government are the legislative, which writes the laws; the executive, which executes the laws; and the judicial, which interprets the laws. And then we also added the Bill of Rights to protect people's individual rights. We wanted to protect everyone's rights, so we added a Bill of Rights. First Amendment, religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech; freedom of religion, freedom of speech, all comes out of this protection in the Constitution. Second Amendment is right to bear arms. Third Amendment is no quartering of soldiers. Remember, that ties back to a grievance from the United States, from the Declaration of Independence. Remember, our 3 major grievances are quartering of soldiers, taxation without representation, and unfair trials. Fourth Amendment, you cannot search my home without a warrant. Fifth Amendment, right to remain silent. Sixth Amendment, timely trial. And Seventh Amendment, jury in a civil case, are all due process amendments. So they're all due process. Eighth Amendment, crime must equal the punishment, no cruel and unusual punishment. Ninth Amendment is I have rights. 10th Amendment is federalism. The states have powers too. And then as citizenship, we just talked about citizenship today. One of the things you all mentioned was voting, which lets you participate in government. And then you also mentioned jury duty, where you're serving to help the justice system and you're getting to be like an active part of government, and that's kind of fun. And the last thing I missed talking about in review is Mercy Otis Warren is a writer, Thomas Paine is also a writer, and James Armistead is a slave and a spy. I don't know if the order will be important. The order won't be important, but the hand gestures help you remember what it's about. So remembering the order of the hand gestures just helps with memorizing what each one's about. But it's going to be more important that you know, 1 is our basic rights: religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. 2 is right to bear arms. You need to know more what they are, not the order. Okay. But you should know the Bill of Rights really well, because we did a relevant application on it, and we did a worksheet on it, and we have reviewed it. We reviewed it 5 days in a row, every day for 5 days. Made you dance to it. There was a music. Okay. So we are now at 1 hour and 24 minutes. So I was not quite able to do a whole semester in 1 hour. Instead, we did a whole semester in 1 hour and 24 minutes. So I'm going to take some questions now and see if anybody has anything that they would like clarification on, or if you have questions about any topics I maybe didn't get a chance to cover. The test is however long it takes you to complete the questions given using strategies. You have one class period to complete the test. Unless you are officially a student who has extended time accommodations, you must complete the test in one class period. That is a district expectation. So the test is one class period long. This is a good opportunity to look through your spiral or to look through your blue book and see if anything jumps out to you as something we didn't maybe cover that you don't remember. So I think we've gone through page 15 of the blue book is information we've covered. We haven't worked all those pages, but bye, Nyla. Good luck with your test tomorrow. I'm glad that hope the video helped. Use your strategies, Nyla. Use your strategies. I'll just sit here in awkward silence. Bye, Nyla. Guys, we're at an hour 28, and we're down to just 3 people watching right now. So I'm going to go ahead and log off. This video will be posted to YouTube. It takes usually a little bit to process, but you'll be able to watch it. I want to say thank you again to everybody who came on. There's some really great participation. I want to say especially thank you to Nyla, who I had last year in 8th grade US history, who popped on and was able to get a little bit of information to help her on her 9th grade final exam, which goes to show that the information will be retained for next year. All right. Have a great night.